From eagnews.org, Kyle Olson. Kyle, good evening, sir. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, so Friday night, this story kind of blew up. Breitbart.com was writing about it. You all had posted this a few days ago. You had cameras in a classroom in a Chicago school. This was during, Social Justice Week. Is that right?
That's right. So it was a couple weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, Jones College Prep, which is a very high-performing school, actually in the entire country. It's a top 100 school in the country, was having Social Justice Week. And one of our contacts in the city of Chicago brought this to our attention, and actually he heard about it from a school employee who didn't like what was going on. And so he very politely contacted the school and said, hey, can I come and observe and record? And they said, sure. And so he recorded this session of a community organizer who was brought into the school to teach students about nonviolent protesting. And what he found was this particular organizer making very inflammatory statements about the NRA, about gun ownership, gun violence, those sorts of things. And so we decided to make those public. We ended up doing a follow-up interview with the dean of the school, Grace Moody, and so what we wanted to do was show that this is the type of thing that's going on in our schools across America, and it's high time that parents and taxpayers be aware of it and stand up and do something about it.
Absolutely. All right, so if you don't mind, we've got this tape. I'd like to go through it with you if we could.
Sure.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and listen here to the beginning of this classroom discussion.
In spring, they are moving to pass conceal and carry so that everybody can carry guns. Are you all in agreement with that?
I am, because I think if you take away guns from regular citizens, the criminals and the police are the only ones who have them. So,
did you look at this? So how many of these on here is able to carry a gun? And they are the leading targets. State line.
All right, let's stop right there for a second. So, first of all, Kyle, I thought it was interesting, this community activist says, well, they're talking in Springfield about passing this concealed and carry. Who's in favor of that? And the first response is, well, me. Yeah, I'm in favor. The bad guys are already carrying guns. Why shouldn't the law-abiding be able to carry guns? And I thought, there was no real logical argument from this community activist. Instead, she started talking about the victims of gang violence in Chicago, which, by the way, has nothing to do with law-abiding gun owners being able to carry their firearms legally so they can protect themselves.
That's exactly it. And again, this was not about let's have a debate about gun rights, about gun ownership,
right?
Those sorts of things. It was steering the students into a particular position, and then basically challenging them if they have what I would consider a very common sense position of, well, let's make sure everyone can own a gun so they can protect themselves. But that obviously was not what she wanted the students to get out of this. So again, my concern with this is that you've got people coming into schools to push a very specific agenda, and it goes against the agenda or the history of our country, frankly.
All right, let's listen into a little bit more of this discussion, the indoctrination in the classroom.
He went to a gun shop over in that area, used a fake identification, and went in there and bought an AK-47 on camera and everything, and brought it back to Inglewood, and just was shooting at some guy with an AK-47, missed, and the bullet went through her window and shot her clean in the face, and she died instantly. She was 14 years old. And it was like, the judge was like, okay, and what do you want us to do? The NRA like, so what? We just $1 billion business. So what you have so many children dying on your streets? That's y'all problem. We just making money.
All right,
Don't just
stop. Wow, Kyle. Wow.
You can't. You have to hear it to believe it. It's just, and just starting right from the top. Can you imagine a judge actually saying that?
So what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Why is this my problem? I mean, it's outrageous. And then just the inflammatory statements that she's making. And then I don't know if you're going to play the next part that she talked about. Okay.
Oh, yes.
But I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. And again, to give people like this access to children in schools, I think is absolutely outrageous. But again, what we're trying to do is bring attention to this and hopefully shame these schools into not doing this sort of thing.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about your conversation with the head of the school here once we conclude listening to what this activist had to say. But let's go ahead and listen. This is later on in the discussion here.
Everybody guns so they can go crazy. Because right now, that's what the NRA wants. Seriously, they will tell you, okay, I have received emails, and I'm telling you that I'm going to hell for this, for what I'm doing. And that these porch monkeys deserve to die.
I would like to propose.
Now, again, and I want to ask, Kyle, you actually reached out to this community activist and said, all right, can you show us the emails that you referred to?
Yes, we did, because I was straight up with her, and I said, look, if the NRA is sending out communications using those types of terms, I think the public deserves to know that. And knowing full well, or at least believing full well, that the NRA is not sending out emails like that. But what I wanted to do was point out that what she's doing is using all of this rhetoric, over-the-top rhetoric, geared at students to rile them up, to make them against the NRA, and fulfilling her personal agenda. And of course, she never got back to me because, I mean, my guess is she never got these sorts of emails.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I've not seen every email that's ever been sent out with a NRAHQ.org email address, but I'm with you, Kyle. I have a very hard time believing that those emails exist, and if they did, I have a feeling she probably would have been rushing to show them to you.
That's right.
So you talked to the principal of this school?
We talked to the dean of the dean of students.
The dean of students. Okay. And what did the dean of students have to say about this presentation?
Well, we didn't talk specifically about this presentation. We talked more broadly about the week. And we said, because again, this rhetoric about the NRA was in the context of teaching students about nonviolent protesting. And so what we got into later in the video where you played the excerpts is these different forms of nonviolent protesting that these community organizers were talking about. And so we just asked basic questions like, well, how does this prepare students for college, since this is Jones College Prep? Mm-hmm. And she gave us a very roundabout answer. And then we said, well, what was the impetus for Social Justice Week? And she said, well, earlier this year we had Gender Bender Day, where all the boys dressed up like girls and the girls dressed up like boys. And because we did that because we wanted the transgender students to feel more included. But it backfired because they thought that they were being mocked. And therefore they had to have Social Justice Week, a full-blown week, I guess, to make up for this mistake. And so what they did was they brought in people like this Black Star Project, which is where these two individuals were from in our video.
Right.
And they had an Occupy session where they had this poetry slam about Occupy Wall Street, and just all of these very left of center type activities. And what we showed out, or what we pointed out in our investigation and in our writing, is that there was no balance in this. There was no let's defend our positions, let's have a debate, that sort of thing, or have someone from this organization come in and someone from the NRA come in. I mean, there was nothing like that. It was all just completely biased, just in my judgment, total indoctrination.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you talk about justice, social justice, otherwise, a bare minimum of justice here would allow someone from the NRA to actually come in and talk about what the organization does, considering the bashing that it received from this activist.
That's right. But again, that's not what it's about. It's about indoctrinating these students and perpetuating this ideology that is so prevalent in many of these schools.
So, Kyle, you were there when this was going on?
I was not there.
You were not.
We had a contact that was. I live in Michigan.
Okay.
Our organization's in Michigan, but we have a contact in the city of Chicago that did go to this.
Because I'm curious. I mean, based on that first response by the student when the question was asked, anybody agree with that? And well, yeah, I do. And given this over-the-top nature, you said this is one of the top 100 schools in the country.
Right.
I'm wondering how many of these students were rolling their eyes or at least thinking to themselves, God, this lady's really over the top here.
Well, that's a good question. In fact, when this series came out, prior to it being on Drudge, because it went on the Drudge Report on Friday,
Right.
We actually got a contact, an email from a parent of a sophomore, I believe he is, who basically validated everything that we said in our blogs, and she basically just underscored everything that we said in terms of this is not the place for this type of thing to be going on. Our schools should be places where students are learning. I mean, the basics of math and writing and reading and preparing them for life. And not indoctrinating them into the adults' preferred ideology.
Well, listen, Kyle, I'm glad to be with us on the program. If there are any updates to this story, let us know, because I'd love to have you back on. If for instance, this activist ever gets back to you, please let us know.
Sure, absolutely.